our internal table structures and why we're getting this stuff over here to push this stuff and tighten it all the way up. All right, so think about how we read. We read left to right, top to bottom. Well, this left stuff is going to be most of the time considered more important, and it's going to squish stuff on the right. So we have to limit that. So one of the ways we can do that is to come into this table structure. All right, find the table structure that is the outermost container of this. Okay, we could come in and try to control it in these columns, but we don't need to do it there. What we need is we need this section here to be 50% of the width. Okay, so we have one column here, we have one column here. If you want them to have equal weight, equal importance, you want to make one of them 50%. Okay, so we're here in our inner table. Here's our column tables. So this is our left column table. Inside of that left column, we're going to make the width of that table division 50% equals 50%. We're going to save. Oops. Now you notice that all of this squishes together and our other table gets equal treatment, or our other column gets equal treatment. Well, maybe you don't want it to be equal. Maybe you want this one to have 60%. Okay, at 60%, you'll notice it pushes one over just a touch tighter, and you can come down here and make, it's going to assume the other one is the remainder, but if you want to not assume that, then you would come in over here and find that right column and make that width equals 40%. Okay, you notice nothing changed because we're following what it assumes. But if you decided I want it to be 30%, sorry, not 300, but 30%, 30% now shortens it up, and it actually forces this other one to be slightly wider, because it's saying that this entire column is going to be 100%. We got 30% here, we have 60% here, but we are forcing that table to 100%. Okay, so what it's saying is this 60%, because it's earlier, it's higher up in the code. When it gets lower down, like we read left to right but top to bottom, when it gets closer to the bottom, it says, oh, this one's going to be 30%. I'm going to ignore that 60% and I'm going to make it 70%. So this is a way you can actually force things to mess up. So we're going to go on ahead and declare that to be 40%, 40%, not percent. And now we have our other column. All right, so play around with that, and then also play around with your styling. Remember, we're talking about what's called information architecture or information hierarchy. Why is this less important than this? Why is this and this more important than this? Is it being conveyed? Is the importance correct? Maybe we need to adjust things. So if you wanted to adjust this bottom sentence down, maybe you could make it 0.8 rem and make the line height 1 rem. And so that gives you things start to squeeze up a little bit. All right, so now we've got a left column, a right column. We've made things, we've forced things to have some different widths. The left column has 60% of the width, while the right column has 40% of the width. Well, there's a little more to it that we may want to consider, because if this text did go all the way to the edge, it's possible they could bump up against each other. So now we're going to start doing something else and entirely, and we are going to add a little padding in. So everywhere that we find a style, we're going to add padding of 0.5 rem, and we'll notice that now we've got a little padding there. So I'm going to copy that padding. I'm going to come down here to our red text, add that padding. You'll notice things start to move over. And then I'm going to add yet a little more padding here. And we see that things space out a little more. All right, why is padding the bad option here? That padding goes all the way around this text. So inside of that box, let me add a border so you can see what I'm talking about. Inside of that box, that padding is the edge of that box to the edge of the text. So we have now created extra spacing between each line. And of course, when you've got a line of text here and a line of text there, it doubles that because you've got space between the bottom of that text and its border, and then the border here and the top of that text. So let's find a different way to do that. Things that we can do is we can, instead of putting the padding on this, we can actually put the padding elsewhere. Or maybe we start to opt for things like line height changes, because the line height only affects the top and the bottoms. Do we want them to be spaced further apart? Probably not. So padding is maybe not the best option here. So we remove padding. You notice our text squishes back up there. We remove padding here, and we remove padding here. All right, so now we've got our squished back text. But how do we get space between this table and that right there? That is where we go back and actually use our cell spacing. If our cell spacing is 5 pixels, we just put this is one of those places where 5 pixels is going to be assumed without having to put px. Okay, in HTML you don't need the px all the time. Well, I don't want it there. Where do I want it? Maybe I want my cell spacing here. I want it to be 5 pixels. So now you notice that I've got a little space here. Now I put my 0 back in there. You'll notice that my border collapses back around it. Now I can take my border out, and I have some extra space there. We could do 5, we could do 10. I'd probably do 10 pixels. Now in cell spacing, you're always going to be working in pixels. Okay. When you start talking about sizes inside of your styles, I would say stick with rem, but you can also put pixel sizes in there. Okay. At that point, instead of 1.5 pixels, you'd probably say 1.5 rem. You'd probably say 25 pixels, and now you get that font size back up where it was. So I'm going to paste my 1.5 rem in. It's going to drop down a touch. And now you see my text in my coupon. All right, now that we've started to do that, I want you to take some time and start building out your coupon text in the right column. When we come back to the next video, I'm going to start visiting this right column, and we're going to put a photo in there. And then we're going to put, let's say, an expiration date in this coupon. All right. So play around with what you've seen so far, and we'll come back and revisit it momentarily.